Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marquise Young from the Bureau of Traffic Operations. I am the statewide traffic incident management engineer and member of the Black History Month work group. And welcome to the Wisconsin DOT Affirmative Action Advisory Committee, or AAAC, celebration of Black History Month on behalf of the Secretary's Office. Black History Month is an annual celebration of achievements by African Americans and a time for recognizing their central role in U.S. history. Also known as African American History Month, the event grew out of Negro History Week, the brainchild of noted historian Carter G. Woodson and other profound African Americans. President Ford officially recognized Black History Month in 1976, calling upon the public to seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected achievements of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. Since 1976, every U.S. president has officially designated the month of February as Black History Month. And other countries around the world, including Canada and the United Kingdom, also denoted a month to celebrate Black History Month. The story of Black History Month begins in 1915, half of a century after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the United States. That September, the Harvard-trained historian Carter G. Woodson and the profound minister Jesse E. Moreland founded the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, an organization dedicated to researching and promoting achievements by African Americans and other persons of African descent. The National Black History Month 2020 theme, Black Family, Representation, Identity, and Diversity, explores the African diaspora and spread of Black families across the United States. And so on the behalf of the Secretary, Greg Thompson, Deputy Paul Hammer, and Assistant Deputy Secretary, Joel Nell Snewin, and the entire Wisconsin DOT, let's get this celebration started. And so at this time, I would like to introduce to some and to present to others our chairperson of the AAAC, Joe Davis Sr., the South Region Program Manager with State Patrol from the Bureau of Transportation Safety, to take us further in our program. So let's welcome Joe Davis at this time.
Hey, Marquise, man, thanks for that introduction and thanks for that historical lesson on what we're getting ready to have. Is some fun and some great conversations here with Black History Month. As you know, and you're part of the Black History Month work group, we planned this thing to really bring some good content to the employees of Woodstock. And I can tell you, there's no better comforting feeling to actually have the support out of the Secretary's office and a team of other folks who really made this thing happen, specifically from folks from OPA, meaning Mike Dunrider, Mark Nickelbine, and also Randy King. So I got the tremendous opportunity to introduce our guest today, and that is Jason Fields. But I just want to tell you a little personal story. I looked at his bio and I said, well, I wouldn't do him justice if I just actually spoke from written word, but I really want to speak about what I know about Jason Fields. Young man who grew up here in Milwaukee, went to Milwaukee Lutheran High School, really had a niche for the community and really wanted to make some systemic change from the neighborhood that he came from. And, as an African-American growing up in Milwaukee, yes, our families, some of us face challenges, but one thing we learned as a culture is to overcome those type of things, whether it's the injustice on the time frame that we grew up on, or whether it's just applying ourselves and not taking no for an answer, but also not giving excuses. Jason Fields, and I finally call him my little brother, he epitomizes all of those things in good work habits. And as you know, we had the honor of actually having him representing us in the Wisconsin Assembly. And so I just got a little, I think that the best way to share who Jason is and to really kick off this conversation is to show you this short video where he challenges all of us. And he asks the question, what are we doing? Can you roll a video for me, please, OPA?
What's happening, everybody? It is your fearless leader, Jason Fields here. Just wanted to take a few minutes to encourage you all to make sure that you are asking yourself the right questions. This COVID-19 pandemic has all of us, I get it, right? It is horrible. It is messed up for a lot of us. For some of us, it is just a life-changing event. But here's the million-dollar question. What are you doing to come out of this thing stronger? What are you doing to make sure that the value that you bring to the community will be of benefit to the community? I see so many people complaining and arguing, and no matter what anybody does, it's never good enough. And look, I get it, right? Like I get it. There's always room for us to do more. But here's the question. What are you doing about it? What are you doing to make sure you are empowering yourself, either through more knowledge, either through spiritual strength? What are you doing to make sure that you are in a position to be of value to help other people? I look and I see all the people on social media and the comments, and I always question, how do you have so much time to where you can be so negative? Social media is entertainment. I get it. Many of us, some of us are using it for business purposes. I get that too. But the ultimate question is, what are you doing to add value to the community? Because out of this, only the strong will survive. Out of this pandemic, only the strong will survive. You can agree or disagree with that. I get it. But the reality is that there are some people who are looking at this as an opportunity. Either you will be a victim or you will be made better because of the circumstances. You will look at this situation and go, you know what? This has allowed me to look at my life, adapt, make some changes. And as I said to people, this is a do-over. This is a starting point. So now maybe you have time to look at your financial situation and go, here's some adjustments I can make. These are some things that I need to do. Maybe you have time now where you can go, you know what? I need some more knowledge in these areas. Now I have the time to do that. My point is this, gang. At some point, we got to have a come to Jesus meeting and stop complaining, stop nitpicking about what people are doing and not doing. Because I always start with, what am I doing? And until you answer that, then we will see that the community is moving forward. The reality is that it takes all of us. And the less of people we have complaining, the more we have people working on solutions to empower themselves, which will in return empower the community. Stop complaining. We got work to do. Let's go.
Wow. I'm glad I'm employed by the State Patrol, because if he comes after me, I may have to call some troopers in to kind of protect me, because that was a powerful message. When somebody challenged you to say, what are you doing? Or in the case of DOT, what are we doing? We know we're doing some good things, from troopers to the infrastructure projects. Just for us, I mean, our deputy secretary has been called in for, through the emergency management structure to really talk about the dissemination of vaccines. We're doing some great things. But I think what Jason is sharing with us is that let's just turn it up a little bit and let's just do a little bit more, because this is where it becomes fun. This is where the excellence applying yourself becomes not only it becomes from a standpoint of being productive, but it also creates that opportunity for you to create this culture of collaboration. So I want to welcome my good friend, Jason Fields, former state representative. I can't genuflect in front of you, but certainly that I'm proud of what you've done. And I should say, the new president and CEO of the Madison Regional Economic Partnership. How you doing, man?
I'm good, big bro. How are you?
I'm good. I always say that you, whenever you show up, you certainly become dapper, like back in the 60s. In the 60s and the 70s, actually it goes further back to when, wearing a suit was one of those things that we were taught to be presentable when we came out into the public. And you're always looking dapper, man. So,
Thank you, man. It's old school. I like you said, I was always taught, even from grade school, this is it. And so there's a running joke around here. People always say you always dressed up, even on Zoom meetings, because that's just me. I'm a young Black man, and coming up, for the things I wanted to do, I had to put on the uniform. This is the uniform.
Right. Especially when you go to church, right?
Yeah. Right.
So here, I talked to you about us having another good friend of mine that's on the call that is going to help me interview you. And he's Marquise Young. He comes from DTSD. He managed the Time program. And we got some questions that we just want to have this conversation with you about Black History Month.
Yeah.
Got some folks on the call. The Affirmative Action Advisory Committee has been established, as you know, through the Secretary's office. And what better way during Black History Month to really kick off a conversation about Black history? But then my fellow employees are able to carry this through as we talk about cultural competency. And not only do we do these, but next month is Women's Month that we're going to be celebrating on May. We're going to be celebrating Asian Pacific Recognition Month. And so that's what the AAAC does, is that we have these conversations around making DOT in the work environment that much better. So thanks for coming in, man. Once again, let's have this conversation. And the best way for me to have this conversation is to really kind of start talking about you. Tell us your story.
Thank you, and to everybody on the Zoom, permission to speak freely and candid. I think, big bro, you know me. When you see that video, and this will go into the story, I'm very candid about what we need to be doing, and that stems from. And let me just be clear, because I think I got to preference this. I didn't just become the CEO of MadREP. Like I didn't just wake up one day and I got some stripes and some scars on my back, man. It's some testimony stuff that you all need to know, so you don't look and go, oh well, that ain't this. That is not this.
Another politician calling in favors, right?
That ain't this. Trust me. So part of that is that when you see that video, part of that is I'm a firm believer that we got to stop waiting for other people to act right. Absolutely. Like I'm not going to sit up here and wait for people to love me, right? God loved me. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to do what's in my power to do in order to be successful and then to give back to the community. How I got to that point, when you see me doing those kinds of videos, was elected in the legislature. Years fast, and I'm a fast forward. I was diagnosed with mild depression, started drinking a lot. I'm a recovering alcoholic, and I share this so people understand this ain't I just woke up and got here. Right. Had a car accident, broke 3 ribs, had to go to jail the day after Christmas in 2016. Came out, and you were with me. Manager Davis, you were by my side. You knew this, you saw this. So had some highs where I was doing good, and then all of a sudden the chaos, the turmoil, the testing period came. And I remember asking God, man, why me? Why all this stuff? And all I heard God saying was, my grace is sufficient enough for you. I just kept hearing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so to fast forward the story, got healthy, got clean, met my beautiful wife. I knew right away I was going to ask her to marry me, because you when God give you a beautiful, strong, intelligent Black woman smarter than you better sew it up.
Well, just remember, this is a children's show now. Okay, don't go no deeper than
so we had to lock that up. And so, long story short, overcame all that stuff, bankruptcy, financial problems, overcame all of that. And out of that process was, we got too much complaining going on in our community. Everybody waiting to see what somebody else gonna do. No, it starts with you. Mm-hmm. It starts with you. So the number one question is always, what are you doing to help the community? Right. If you got time to complain, you got time to be working on the solution. And so, long story short, came out of all that tremendously blessed and favored. And then this year, got interviewed for this position, applied for it, they accepted me, and now here I am, the CEO of an 8-county region in South Central Wisconsin. Population-wise, a very large area, and looking to make some changes. And so that's the gist of the story.
It's interesting, because it takes a strong person to be transparent, right? Yeah. Because so many times we want to polish ourselves up and think we have no flaws. But most people, when you see that's the humanistic side of anybody who's willing to share their challenges, so that they can give a real testimony on their triumphs, man. And I really appreciate you sharing that with us, because, although we know that the African-American community, or the Black community, however one wants to put it, we know we have challenges. It doesn't mean that we can't overcome those. We just have to burn the midnight oil, right? We have to stay up later. We have to run faster. We have to jump higher. And once that's all said and done, we understand that there has been progress made. But the key thing is, what type of legacy will we leave for the next generation, right?
Right.
So, the second question I want to ask you, man, and this is, I know you've been there for a little bit over a month, right? But, the Madison Regional Economic Partnership, tell us about the MadREP, because there is a connection between a long-term economic growth and the DOT. So share with us, what drew you there, and what is the MadREP?
So Madison Economic Regional Partnership we're an economic development agency. We're one of 9 agencies. We're one of 9 agencies in the state that does economic development. And we do it for 8 counties: Madison, Dane, Sauk, Iowa, Rock, Green, Columbia, Jefferson, I may be missing one, but we do it for 8 counties. And the issue now is economic development has changed, where it was business development, business attraction, and business retention, making sure businesses don't leave. But now economic development is workforce development, is community development. And so it encompasses all of these different things now. And so for a person like me, who is an advocate of community development, an advocate of workforce development, making sure Black folks understand, hey, this is the future coming. We need to be in a position to maximize and to exploit the opportunities. And so Madison Economic Development Partnership, we do site selection for businesses. We do courses where we partner with organizations, businesses, to train some of the students in our Inspiring Pathways program with the Department of Public Instruction. We also look to create, we offer a lot of data regarding, if you're a company coming into one of our areas or our region, we're the people you want to talk to make sure you have a good process. We're the person that you want to talk to facilitate meetings. So information, data, site selections, elected official relationships. So we're that sort of almost broker of a lot of information. If they need programs, their transportation issues, guess what? You call MadREP, MadREP calls Manager Joe Davis. Now you connected. Now you getting somewhere. That's what we do.
Okay. Well, you're thorough, very thorough. Excited for you to be in that spot, man. And the whole transportation issue. And I'll get to that as it connects to those counties. One thing I do know is down in Walworth County, they have a company down there that deals with artificial intelligence, man. And, you know, these are the type of things that I get excited when we have a person of your caliber in that position. As you know, we got the M7 here, you know, the Milwaukee 7, which is another economic development. Right. Now we almost got the southern half of the state covered with some long-term economic growth. So I'm going to punt it over, no pun intended, because of the, you know, Super Bowl, but I'm going to punt it over to Marquise Young, who has his mic muted, and he's got a couple of questions he'd like to ask you.
Yeah.
Okay? All right.
Yes. Well, thank you. My next question will be, and I grew up in the Madison area, went to school in Verona with the expansion of Epic, and now with Foxconn in that southeastern region, with Foxconn that brought, you know, investors, it brought the business, the economic growth that you were talking about. With your new role with the MadREP, under the 8 counties that you oversee, as far as with infrastructure, attracting new businesses, with the expansion of DOT. The question is, knowing that WISDA has an excellent performance on major transportation programs and infrastructure projects, with using that knowledge, assisting building, what are some strategic objectives of long-term growth within your regions, you know, as far as we're bringing businesses and major corporations to the area?
I think the first thing you got to do from my perspective is, and I'm going to say this, I throw a lot of cliches out, so you all have to forgive me. But number one is, if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu. And so what that means is that you need to be in a position where when there are things going on, you're there, or you have some kind of connection to it. And let's use this example. So when I took this position, part of my goal and mission was to find African Black entrepreneurs in the biosciences, transportation, ag tech, fintech, health tech, and bring them to a Madison region. My second initiative, or one of my other initiatives, is also how to attract what we call foreign and direct investment. Foreign companies, foreign investors coming into Madison, coming into our region, and seeing that there's a process or something that they want to do. The way this ties into the Department of Transportation, as you all know, is one thing that a lot of people want to know about. When you look, and if you go to our website, you can see that there's an exodus of people that come in and go out to Madison to work. So when it looks to transportation, and you all have some economic development plans as well, economic development policies and programs as well. For example, we get a foreign or international company, they want to do some things that may be called for some kind of travel via the airports that we have in the region. That's the area where you all play. If we talk about regional transit authorities, RTAs, why we didn't get those, that's a whole political battle that I'm not going to get into. But and I'm going to say this candidly, it was a no-brainer. We should have done these because it attracts people when they're looking to see what kind of area is it if I want to bring my business there.
I can transfer you if it's in a meeting. Can you leave a message and they'll call you back?
Sorry.
I'm going to transfer you, but if you do get it.
Okay, sorry about that. So that wasn't me. So when we look at what happens with what makes a area sexy, what makes an area thriving. For example, Madison is ranked, when you look at Madison and Milwaukee, we're ranked as the #1 area for migration in the tech community. Madison is #1. When you look at places to retire, Madison is up there. When you look at U-Haul, just did a survey, Madison and Milwaukee. So when you look at all these things, transportation is one area where when companies come, when employees come, they want to know, can I get to a place? How easy is it for me? If I have a product, how easy for me is it to ship my product? Export, import, how easy is that? All these things make it your area attractive. And so that's why we need to have some game plan. Organizations like MadREP having a relationship with WISDOT and what you all do, so that when we have companies that say, like a Facebook, for example, hey, we want to come and set up shop here. Well, this is what we have, and this is why your employees will like it. When you have other areas that may have to transport goods and services, they may have to use our airways, our waterways, or our freeways. This is what we have to make it, appealing for you to come here. Not only is it that, but, and I'm gonna say this, and this is where the African American, your group, the organization, where all your work comes into play. At one point in time, Reuben Anthony was heavily involved. And when you have companies or when you have contracts come out, you've all heard this before. Well, we couldn't find. Good
afternoon, Department of Transportation. This is Vera. How may I help you?
We couldn't find anybody, or we didn't know which group to use, or when you have people that look like us who are adamant about diversity, equity, and inclusion, when it comes to opportunities, then we can look to say, okay, here's how members of our community can come and play a role, create jobs, create sustainable living, help our communities from an economic point of view by doing businesses with WISDOT or the state. So all these things play a role. And again, if you're not at the table, you probably on the menu. And so if you don't have people that look like you advocating for you, don't complain when it ain't coming. Does that answer your question? That was a long way of answering it.
Yes, it does. Thank you. I guess switch gears a little bit more about your background, having a background with political environment with the government in the state of Wisconsin. Can you describe how it was described?
Hi, did we get cut off?
Hello?
Okay.
I can hear you, but yeah.
Okay. All right. I guess my next question is, as an African-American male, how can you describe surviving the political environment in the state of Wisconsin?
Now that I'm not in the legislature, let me keep it 100 with you all. I'm a child of God first. I'm a Black man second. And so the way I approached everything was, how does it impact my community? Because what tends to happen politically is you get groups and segments of people arguing and debating on either side of an issue, and neither one of those sides are taking into the consideration what's best for your community. And so what I've said is, I don't come from a lens of, I'm not going to argue over which group of white people is best for me. I'm not going to do that. Now, what I will do is, how does it impact my community? And that's the lens that I'm going to come from. And when you operate from that, it sometimes means that sometimes Democrats are right, sometimes Republicans are right. But again, remember, if you're not at the table, you probably on the menu. So the first job is to get in the room, right? The first job is to be in the room where the decisions are being made. We always approach everything after all the decisions been made. So it was never my purview to be sitting on the outside waiting for somebody to decide what's best for me and my community. And so for me, it was always I have allegiances to God and then to my people. Everything else is secondary. And so that allowed me to walk with my head held high, going, I'm going to make decisions based on what's best for the community. And so that's the way I approached it. And I find when you're open and honest, Like I've always tell people, and I'll tell you all, I'm not going to lie to you. You may not like what I have to say, but I'm not going to lie to you. And I'm going to treat you with respect. I'm going to treat you with courtesy, and we can talk, and we can even vehemently disagree, but it should never become personal. And I'm going to say this, we as Black people got to stop thinking emotionally. We got to start thinking logically, strategically, because that's how you begin to move the needle forward and start to implement solutions for your community. So that was how I navigated the political space. And it worked well. I mean, quite honestly, I think I may be the only African-American that got legislation signed by 3 different governors. 30 bills signed into law by Tony Evers. And so, you know, for me, it was about the work. It wasn't about the Hollywood moments where you all see, and let me say this, because we got to do a better job. Stop celebrating people because they just jumping up and with their hands up in the air, screaming at the top of their lungs. That does not equate to something being accomplished. We got to stop doing that, because people come into our communities and we get hoodwinked because we think they doing something because they carrying the Bible when they yelling. That don't mean nothing. That don't mean nothing. If you come in broke and you leave broke, nothing happened, nothing changed. And so we have to do a better job of knowing how to operate politically. And politically means we need to figure out what's best for our community. And instead of having people make plans for us, we need to make the plans and then take it. And so that was how I always functioned, and it worked for me.
Good. Now, as far as with the private sector, so how did you get into the private sector? Because, you know, the political and private is such different, not just the increase in salary.
It's way different. But remember, I came from the private sector. I was a former stockbroker. Okay. And my boss was an African-American man. We managed $100 million. And it was business. It was, I don't know if some of you may know, Mark Purnell was my mentor. And what I've learned is that you have to categorize and learn how you're coming into stuff. The private sector is different. Don't nobody care about your problems. Ain't nobody caring about you complaining. It's only what have you accomplished? What have we done? And where are we going? That's it. My boss once told me, he said, Jason, don't never come into my office without having a solution. And that's the kind of stuff that trained me. So I took that into the political sector, where in politics, you all, 90% of it is garbage, because it's done for attention. It's done to score points. And if I tell you all that half the stuff you all see on TV, that by the time you all see it on TV, the decision was already made. Yeah, 90% of the stuff you all see on TV, when you see everybody debating back and forth, the decision's already made. And so I had to understand the game. And when I went back to the private sector, it was after having the political acumen, the emotional intelligence, that was what increased, because everything at some point relates to politics or has some politics in it. You, big bro, you know this. All my saints on the line. Don't get us started about church politics, which might be worse than regular politics.
Oh yeah.
and so what politics did was help me build up my emotional intelligence, because now when you're in a political sector, you got to deal with a lot of different personalities, a lot of different angles, a lot of different agendas. But in the private sector, that sort of comes down, because we don't have time to be playing a bunch of games. We got to figure this stuff out. And so for me, that was the transition was easy, because that's what I was always about.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah, the money is way better, bro. The money.
You probably one of the few people to go in politics and come out with some integrity.
And that's important. That's probably the biggest compliment that anyone can get is to get into public service, be ruled by ethics, because you're the same way today as you were yesterday, and what you're going to be like in the future. So, I mean, that's a great questions, Marquise. I mean, you really kind of brought out some of the things. The next question that I wanted to ask him, when you talk about transitioning from politics to the private sector, but in his case, it was from the private sector to politics back to the private sector. So, yeah. But here's the thing, Mr. Fields, we know that there are racial disparities and there's tensions throughout, not only here in the state of Wisconsin, but throughout the country. And we understand that there's a methodology. And this conversation could not have occurred at a better time, especially since we've having this transition nationally, and it's also affecting the state of Wisconsin. And, I just want to share with you that when Governor Evers actually issued Executive Order 59, that, state agencies had to come up with an equity and inclusion plan, and DOT is done with theirs, right? We have an equity inclusion plan. We're getting ready to carry it out. Secretary's office has been adamant that we have through these partnerships, we have to carry out some of these mandates. And one of the mandates is creating these public-private partnerships, right? If there's an opportunity, then you have to have candidates who are qualified. Number one, you just don't want to just hire anybody. They have to be qualified, but also there has to be key performance indicators in order for you to achieve those goals. So, as a CEO of the MadREP, what is your most concern, and what is your vision for addressing these issues as far as disparities are concerned?
One of the things, and it starts with the mindset, and I posted something on Facebook that says, it sort of, to sum it up, was based on, the culture of the organization will be a reflection of the leader, the person that's leading it. And so, number one, we have to be mindful. And let me thank my team here, because when I came here, they were mentioning diversity, inclusion, and equity before I was, and I found that to be a relief. And to be very candid, when you have white people who are they're not just saying it, right? Who understand that it's one thing to talk about diversity, but diversity is a numbers game. That's just, well, we need more people. We need more different people. On the surface, that's fine. But then you have to address the equity, because equal doesn't mean it's equitable. You know what I mean? And so then we have to look at that. And then the final, which is the foundation, is it inclusive? We can have all the diversity, all the, the equity stuff, but if at the end of the day, if DOT has a diversity initiative and you guys have equity and inclusive, but nobody feels included in the plans, then what do you have? You just got a bunch of people congregating somewhere and ain't nothing changing. And so for us, it becomes, what are we doing to make sure that when policies are being thought of, there are Black folks there in the beginning, not afterwards. When projects, whether it's economic projects, whether it's internal structures, are we there on the ground floor? Number two, what does our diversity and equity and inclusion statement look like? And is it on our website so that anybody knows, can come to it? If we are doing business with an organization, do we require to see theirs? So all these things have to be talked about, but more importantly, not just talked about, but enforced.
Sure.
The real issue becomes the enforcement. We can throw up all this stuff on a website, but at the end of the day, if ain't nobody following it, what good has it done? Yeah. And so for us, those have to be, are we operating out of not just numbers, but are we making it in an environment where people feel welcome? Yeah. That's really the key. I'll end it with this. It's one thing to say, well, treat everybody the way you want to get treated. That sounds good, but there's a better rule, in my opinion. Treat people the way they want to be treated.
Sure.
And so that's the mindset that we have to walk into this stuff. And that mindset leads to us questioning and digging down and analyzing, Are we just diverse? Is it just a numbers game? Because out the gate, we already got diversity. Me and you are diverse, big bro. But are we treating everybody with equity? And above all, are we making it a place where people want to come back to or want to come to in the first place?
Yeah, that's powerful, man, because that is absolutely true. Sometimes people want to separate, those three important pillars, right?
Yep.
But they have to be interchangeable, and you have to work on them simultaneously. And so you bring up a very excellent point. Let's just say this. I'm having a great conversation. I'm glad I didn't eat lunch, because otherwise I would have got overfed with this conversation. It's food for thought. I want to remind everybody, please mute your microphones. We are accepting live questions out of the chat box. And if you don't mind, I want to go to the chat box, because there's a couple of folks who want to ask you some questions. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask a question from Melissa True. She says, I believe it is, nope, that is not true, because actually she's telling somebody to mute their own microphone when they were interrupting you. But the question is coming from Travis Hull. And he says, from your experience working within the legislature and transitioning into the private sector, do you feel that differences, similarities of culture between you and your colleagues impacted your success in either arena? And so he's being smart. See, DOT folks are smart. They ask like 3 or 4 questions in a question, right? So we'll start with that one.
Did I feel like my working with the legislature transition, do I feel the difference and similarities of a culture between my
impacted your success?
Yes, I will say that, yes, because in politics, and let me be very candid, when you're in this area, and I'm gonna say this, when you are an intelligent, free-thinking Black man, you are a threat to somebody. And so when I was in the legislature, I was already told, Jason, you will never get appointed to joint finance. Because, and again, I'm not knocking anybody specifically. I'm just saying, because in politics, it's not who's best for the job. Politics is who's best for the party, who's best for the group. And so in the private sector, where I come from, it's, look, are you the best person for the job?
Yeah.
I mean, if I tell you who else was interviewing for this position, I've heard through rumors, through the grapevine, from my experience, the decision was who's best for the organization to take the organization to a level where we want to go. In politics, you don't necessarily have that culture. In politics, it's who's best for the party, who's going to do whatever we say. That's what rules the day, not who's the most effective. Because I'm going to tell you all, some of y'all got legislators who ain't got nothing done, but they in leadership positions. But I ain't there no more, so I can say that kind of stuff.
But just keep in mind, this is being streamed on YouTube. You have to still come home and but a follow-up on that, what arena was really impacted based upon you being successful, understanding the dynamics in the legislature, understanding not only the racial makeup, but the gender makeup, the advocacy, the conservative versus, liberal, all of those other things here in the state of Wisconsin, how did that impact your success, understanding those things?
For me, again, it was about what can you get done? And we underestimate emotional intelligence when it comes to this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning you can't cuss out everybody and then turn around and need their help. And in politics, you need to be mindful because the very same people you at odds with will not work with you, will blackball you, and you will have to work harder. I think my tenacity in learning business is what drove me. And so one of the things that I'm very proud of is when I first got into the legislature in 2004, I used to wonder, why don't we have a financial literacy taught in our schools?
Yes.
At one point, you got.
I remember you going to the legislature with that being your so people think you just got into education.
Yeah.
It's always been part of your art because of where you grew up at.
Since 2004.
Yes.
In fact, some of the stuff you all are seeing now was stuff, quiet as it's kept, me and Alderman at the time, Davis, were talking about years ago. And so part of that was, why don't we have financial literacy taught in our schools? Now, mind you, this was 2004.
Sure.
At one point, you had more kids taking band lessons than you had learning about finances. Now, if you really think about it, that makes absolutely no sense. But now, umpteen years later, I want to say in 2017, we passed a law that says now financial literacy needs to be taught. Because here's what happens: if you don't know, then if you know what you need to be working on, if you know, if you have some experiences in learning money management, if you have understanding of how to build wealth, for many of you know, I use Andre Lee Ellis as an example. I went and talked to some of his young boys, and at the time, Nike stock was at $50. And this was maybe in 2017, 2018. Nike stock was at $50. I told all the young men, look, instead of buying the shoes all the time, buy the stock. The stock now, I haven't checked, but might be $80, $90. And now we're teaching our young men, our young women, how to build economic power. You know, in the words of Jay-Z, I can't help the poor if I'm one of them. Right. And so we have to, those are the kinds of initiatives that, for me, that was one of the big ones. When we say what changed, for me, that was it. Now, here's the flip side of that coin. Some people say, well, Jason, what have you done? I'm gonna turn that back on you. Why is it you don't know? If I was your legislator, how is it you don't know what I was doing? And it ain't because I wasn't sending out mailers. It ain't because I wasn't in the news. It ain't because I wasn't on TV and the radio. The question becomes, if you really want to make change in your community, what are you doing? We've got so easy and lax with thinking everybody's supposed to come and just share information with us. That's not how this goes. And so when we talk about, you know, what are we doing? It's not just on adjacent fields. We are community. This is all of us. When one of us is coming up, you need to turn around and look at the other one. But we can't do that if we steady waiting for somebody else to come and do it for us. Sorry, that was a long way of answering that question.
It's real talk, man. And I think every community has these challenges, but because we're talking about Black History Month, we have to talk about, you know, the successes and the challenges. And that's where, you know, I enjoy having the support and having these forums, because we're not here to piss anybody off. We're here to speak the truth. And we're also here to share our point of view and how we can make things better, especially for our work environment, our daily family life, but most importantly for the next generation. So, you know, it's a very profound thought process that we're talking about right now. And this conversation has to happen.
These forums are vitally important because when you share it, then it's time. Like, I don't know how many of you all knew that, financial literacy is mandated in Wisconsin, which means if your child is not being taught financial literacy, you need to start asking some questions. Mm-hmm. And so I want to thank you all for doing this, because again, like, it's not about me trying to make anybody mad, because a lot of this stuff I learned from my elders, from people. When I decided to run, I went to people like Alderman Davis and said, I want to run. Could you help me? Could you talk to me? And so we've lost some of that with this generation, where there's been the lack of transition. We're not talking enough. Yeah. And that's why these kinds of forums are highly important, man, because it's so much information that we don't know that could really uplift our community.
And we're glad to have you too, man. I want to get into something that you talked about, unicorns. You know, you talked about, you know, private companies that are valued over $1 billion. And, you know, we can go to Epic and we can actually go to Foxconn, you know, choosing to come into the state of Wisconsin. Yep. And I really wanted to make that investment. You talked a little bit about foreign direct investment. There you have the epitome of an entrepreneur who grown their company through Epic. And then you have foreign direct investment of a Taiwanese company coming in and building a campus in the Southeast region. What's your strategy to attract those type of companies to Wisconsin? And I'll tell you this from the DOT perspective. Every time you have a major development with that, we have an infrastructure project, right? Because they sit down and they work with the state. And it's important for us to either keep our roads up or build more capacity if there's more volume on our road. So, what's your strategy to attract those type of companies, and also be a little bit more savvy about how you work in a public-private partnership in order for us to get that done?
So the first thing is, well, number one, you got to realize all the assets that we have in Wisconsin, and I meaning what will attract somebody here. The second, one of the areas that I've focused on was particularly when it comes to African Americans, looking at sectors where there are African Americans who are in life sciences, agriculture, and I invested in some of these companies personally. And so my goal was to reach out to some of these individuals and say, hey, would you look at Madison as a place to relocate your business? And so in my mind, I'm killing a couple of birds with one stone. I'm bringing in potential African Americans in areas where, let's be honest, you don't hear a lot of talk about us. If I told you there was a young African American woman in the LGBT community who is a brilliant life biosciences individual, another African American woman who I'm talking to with a brother here who's over SSM Health, who's one of the higher ups, setting up a meeting with her, and because she owns her own telehealth medicine company, to say, hey, is there opportunity for us to partner? Could you come to our region, our area?
Sure.
And so I think the first thing to do is, number one, look at the people who are doing things, see where you can add the value, and then invite them to a sit down, invite them to parlay. And we have several of those discussions going on right now with African American individuals. I met a doctor who's a professor. He created a vegan fine foods restaurant, all vegan. In his first year, he grossed over $1 million in his first year. So I hooked him up with a brother here who is doing some things around healthy food. We have food deserts in our area. And so a lot of this has to do with, can we all just parlay and talk? Can we all get on the horn and have a conversation?
Sure.
That's where a lot of it starts. And sometimes it's the networking, it's the connection. One of the reasons why we haven't done well is because access to capital, when it relates to African Americans, is a huge issue. And that's because we don't necessarily have the connections of somebody who can just write $1 million check.
Right.
Most of us didn't go to Harvard or Stanford. And I'm not knocking those who do, but you have that. If we don't have that, how do you expect us to compete? And so now part of it is to open up those discussions with people and look at programs that focuses on access to capital, looking at some of these entrepreneurs and saying to them, hey, if you come here, Department of Transportation has this economic program that you can take part of. And so now me and you, Brother Davis, now we sitting down with this person trying to work out what do we need to do to get your company here to hire and train more African American students, because this is a college town. And so that's how you begin to do that stuff. A lot of it, and I'll say this, has to do with, is there a willingness to change the narrative?
Yeah. John Maxwell always said that he's in the business of building leaders, right?
That's it.
And absolutely, we have to be a lot more intentional. Even in DOT, is that we have to be intentional on building capacity for the next generation of leaders, right? And so it's important for us to get some type of methodology for that to happen. But internally, what has to happen is that there has to be a cultural collaboration, number one. But number two, we have to understand that diversity is not a bad thing. It's a good thing when you have different points of view coming to the table. And our culture, the African American culture, ever since the 1800s, we're very intuitive, but we're also very creative on patterns that sometimes we never have gotten credit for.
Right.
But we
That's right.
continue to be very, very engaged in trying to make sure we make a better way for not only our families, but for the kids, their grandkids, and everything else. We got one more question in the chat box. I'm going to turn it over to Marquise, and then we're going to have to wrap this up, man, because the time has flown by so fast, man, that we just, and the content that you're providing us, man, I think it's food for thought for every DOT employee to really kind of reflect on it. But in the chat box, Abby R is saying, how did you as a legislator build bridges with folks on the other side of the aisle and have them at least consider your belief, especially when some of them or their constituents may not hear you because you are a Black man? Now, I know you can spend about half an hour on that, but we ain't gonna give you half an hour, okay? Yeah. You got 2 minutes to answer that so we can go to Marquise, and Marquise can ask the last question, then we're gonna wrap this up, okay, man?
Yeah, to answer that question really quickly, I think coming in, I always had a game plan. My game plan was to be effective and get stuff done for my community. That's it. That's the only thing that matters. I'm not there, as one Republican taught me, we ain't here to be friends. And so I'm here because my community needs something, and by whatever means necessary, I'm gonna get it done. You ain't gotta like me, but you're gonna deal with me. And so a part of it, and when you have that, you treat people with respect.
Yeah.
We can disagree, people can be racist, but God, this is my faith. Treat people with respect. And I'll be honest with you, in politics, y'all, I'm not a genius, but I can tell you just by being nice and not being a jerk, I got a lot of stuff done simply because I treated people with respect.
Yes, you did. Marquise, I'm going to punt it over to you, and then for the last question, and then I'll wrap it up from there. Go ahead, Marquise.
All right, sounds good. So we thank you for your time again, Mr. Fields, and I know your big brother Joe had all the loaded questions, the best questions, but I wanted to ask you the most important question of it all. What was your honest assessment of the Super Bowl 55?
Yes, man. So, I didn't really watch it all because I stopped after the Packers lost. In fact, the first Packers play when Tampa Bay scored, I turned it off because I knew where this was going. The defensive coordinator for Tampa Bay won that game. They just had the quarterback running. I'm a competitive guy, and so I don't always want to say people just didn't show up. They didn't have no heart. And at this point, I'm not mad Tom Brady won the 7th. I mean, it looks like that's where we were going anyway. But true assessment, the defensive coordinator for Tampa Bay won that Super Bowl because their defense was they kept him moving and they didn't execute. And so to me, I credit the coordinator for that.
Yes, thank you. And with that, Joe Davis with closing remarks.
Well, let me say how much of a pleasure and an honor for you to join us, the Affirmative Action Advisory Committee, on the second week of Black History Month. When we made these selections, we kind of put forth people's name to see if it would be an interesting conversation to engage you. And it couldn't have happened at a better time, which you actually, after Paul Jaden's exit, you coming on board and really giving us a snapshot right there in Southwest Wisconsin about how you tend to grow that economy over there. And we have a vested interest. You're going to play a vital role because as you attract investments, I'm pretty sure that the Secretary's office and also the governor and the lieutenant governors is really watching out how we can attract businesses in that area, which is good. One thing I know about DOT, man, is, and this is from way back when I had to engage with DOT. You get the job done, man. If there's a project that has to deal with concrete and asphalt, you ain't gonna call nobody else but DOT because we can engineer it, we can design the infrastructure, and at the end of the day, there are folks that I'm very honored and proud of working within the Secretary's office, specifically Secretary Thompson, that makes that his priority, man. So, I mean, we are just honored to actually have you here, knowing what the long-term relationship is. And also, we're going to be calling on you when we start talking about, employee recruitment. That's going to be important, how we move forward. And we have already talked about working with the Urban League, and now we got another ace card, and that is working with the MadREP.
No, man. Thank you. Shout out to you all, because as a legislator, I don't think I ever heard real problems at DOT. You all have done a great job. You all have made a lot of people look good. So y'all made a lot of people look good, and so congratulations.
We got some work to do internally. I appreciate you. One thing, and I know we got to wrap this thing up, but I'll say this: you never wanted to come in and micromanage a department. You handled your side of the policy perspective. And from the administrative side, you were always willing to work with administrators. And that's one thing that I know about you, man, is that you know how to build coalitions, man. And personally, I'm proud of you. And good to see that, you can tell you got that old man married smile on your face right now. So everything is just proud to have you on, man. So thank you, man. I'm gonna wrap this up on behalf of the AAAC. We have two more events. We have Michelle Carter next week. That's going to celebrate women in government, and then our final, what I call the cherry on the top, or the dessert, or the closer, as if you like baseball, like the Brewers, the American Family Stadium, but it's the Brewers, regardless of who takes over the sponsorship. Our closer is no other than the Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, and so we are very excited about having this young man on today, and every week. At the end of February, we'll have a little bit of things that you can learn more about Black History Month, and also your fellow Wisconsinite who is doing some great things. So on behalf of the Affirmative Action Advisory Committee, or what we fondly call the AAAC, and the Secretary's Office, can't say enough about the support that we're getting from the Secretary's Office and the Black History Month work group, who has done a great job, and my fellow members from the AAAC. We want to thank you, Jason, and also we want to thank everybody who tuned in to actually listen to a little bit more about the history of African Americans on Black History Month during this day today. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.